Axons Unleashed.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Axons Unleashed. My name's Robbie Turner and I'm joined by some wonderful gentlemen here from Soldier On. Now, really importantly, in November last year, I speak to you now in March 2022. November last year, he did version 1 of the great man himself, Joe Lucino, coming to join Axons Unleashed, and we spoke about all things joining the military, transitioning from the military, all things PTSD and how to connect with your mates, etc., etc. So as promised, and as in line with the amazing feedback that we've got from so many people, including a conversation I had last night with a very proud parent who wants to send his son to the army. What's it going to be like, Robbie? And I'm like, go listen to the podcast I did back in November. So, Joe, I know you've got a guest with you, but first and foremost, buddy, welcome back to Axons Unleashed.
Oh, Robbie, it's great to be back, and geez, what an introduction. Wow.
We spoke before off air, just we're going to do a little bit of freewheeling, and I've done zero preparation for this because I like to do it that way because everything's raw and real, and off the cuff is not how I run my life. But people that know me know that there's an unscripted and unleashed part of me, which that's when you get the best from me. Before we sort of bring in your guest, mate, like I said, I've spoken to spouses, I've spoken to veterans, I've spoken to current serving members, I've spoken to people with and without PTSD, and certainly last night I had a conversation with a very caring father who wants to send his son off to the army. He's like, what's it going to be like? So the messages that we spoke about with my colleague Dan last time have resonated far and wide, and as per the title of that podcast, I said, every defence member and veteran needs to listen to this. And I listened to it again over the last 24 hours, and I said, look, please go ahead and do the right thing and share this with your community. I know that it's been shared and viewed and listened to many, many times. So I can only assume that makes you feel great that you've got your Soldier On shirt on, and you know the messages that you're putting forward as a qualified ex-military psychologist yourself are reaching far and wide, which I know fills up your cup.
I'm speechless. it's not often that happens.
Where do you go with that?
I'm just telling you that's what's happened in our life since we spoke last time, mate. So I really appreciate you being on, and I can't wait to explore what's going to happen. You've got another fine gentleman sitting here with us as well, mate, via Zoom. And those watching on YouTube will be able to see there's a couple of different screens. Go ahead, Joe, and introduce your buddy, please.
Well, here is Dan Vincent. Dan Vincent is the soon-to-be Director of Health and Wellbeing and my boss. So I'm going to be extra nice to this gentleman today. But as he stands today, he's our National Manager for Education in the Pathways team. Dan comes today to talk with me about some very important things in relation to career construction. So with no further ado, I might just pass it straight to Dan because Dan knows Dan better than I know Dan.
Now, let me just say, there's enough Dans in my life. We've got 2 Dans that work here in the business, and now we've got another one joining us. So, Mr. Dan Vincent, welcome to Axons Unleashed, buddy. How you feeling?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and Joe doesn't have to be nice to me. He knows that. So I don't work that way. So it's lovely to be here. And as we were talking about earlier, I've listened to parts of the podcast and had a good chuckle at some of the things that were said and the discussions around the military, and really excited about potentially where we can take this conversation of the future and where things can shift into a new light and a new direction for those who are serving and those who are thinking about leaving and those who have left.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to getting into some of that. So, mate, before we get started, just so people can understand who you are, what your background is, just give us your little 2-minute elevator pitch about who the hell is Dan Vincent.
So Dan Vincent is, I was 16 years in the Army, Combat Corps, started my life in 4RR, or what is it now, the Commando unit. Done multiple tours through Afghanistan, Iraq, Timor, posted up to 1RR after a while, decided, hey, let's just go and injure my spine and my cervical, and got medically transferred into the clerical corps. I call it's a little bit of a fall from grace. I call it my little fall from grace. I was accepted off to be an officer, looking at being a pilot. Decided to go on one more operational tour and did severe damage to my back, which then saw me go and become a clerk.
Wow.
Which is nothing wrong with that. It was just, in my world, it was a spiral out of control, and did it for many years, and just separated medically in 2019.
Okay, yeah. So you're talking about a sudden, life-changing moment, Y junction that you did not foresee and prepare for, and all of a sudden, bang, stuff's happening now. The trajectory you're on has taken a completely different course. Tell us about that quickly. Tell us about that quickly. What were you thinking, feeling, dreaming about, wondering about at that time and the following weeks as sort of things, as the diagnosis became apparent and the new direction became somewhat clear? What were you thinking, mate?
It's like I always talk about, I can still remember that clear, defining moment where it was my choice to go on operation. I was standing there with the company 2IC, and he said, "We need you to go. You're the full track. We understand you're going to RMC, but we need you just for a couple of weeks." And I was like, I rang my wife now and said, "What do I do?" She goes, "Your call." So I went, "Let's go on operations."
Everyone would have said that, mate.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, let's do it. I only just really got back home from Iraq. So I was like, okay, let's do it. And we, within 2 days, I'd wrecked my spine, and I didn't know the extent of my injury until I got home, because I just put it down to, carrying all my equipment. At a later date, I'll go into how it all happened. It's quite a funny story. I didn't get blown up or anything like that. It's quite. Can I say something? Embarrassing, but
you decided to soldier on, didn't you?
Yeah.
Pun intended. There we go. Pun intended. Did you sit there with your soldier on shirt?
Soldiered on, got up, came home because I came home early to get ready for RMC, and it was. I was sitting in Townsville going to my wife. I was like, is the air conditioning on? I just said to her at night, I was like, is the air conditioning on? And she's like, oh, what do you mean? And so she goes, yeah. I said, oh, okay, that's a bit nerve wracking. And she goes, why? I said, because my leg's really hot and I can't feel the cold air. And she's like, oh. So I went, and I was still exercising and stuff, and I knew I had pain and everything like that. And then within about 2 days, I started to do lift, and so my body went into protection mode.
Of course.
And I went and had a scan, and I didn't know the extent. I came in, and the doctor said, "Stop everything." And after they'd said that, they rang RMC in front of me and said, "Hey, Corporal Vincent's not attending.
He ain't coming."
And I'm sitting here. No one's told me what has happened yet or the extent of my injuries. And then the doctor hangs up the phone. I was like, so am I not going in January? And she goes, oh, no, you're not going in January. I said, can I go in July?
Next intake.
And she goes, no, you're probably not going to be in the army any longer. Oh, and wow. It was just like, I was like, oh, so it's bad, is it? And she goes, has no one explained to you the what's the words I'm looking for?
Protocol.
The extent of your injuries. And I was like, no. And she goes, oh, you need to stop doing everything. There's potential surgeries, and I just went into spiral, like loss of identity, what everybody goes through, loss of identity. What am I going to do? Where am I going to be? And I spiraled quite hard, quite quickly, and went and obviously got did the thing, pain meds, alcohol,
coping
mechanisms
like that.
Coping mechanisms. Coping mechanisms. Did it quite well from my wife. didn't know what was happening. So it was that massive shock. And then I got a really good surgeon who said, and people might laugh when they hear this, and so my friend said it as well. They're like, "Can you feel your penis?" And I was like, "Yes." Can you wee and poo? And I was like, "Yes." He goes, "You don't need surgery."
You'll be right. Yeah.
You'll be right. He goes, "There's two options." He goes, "It's going to take you 2 to 3 years if you do the non-surgery, but we'll get you better. Or I can cut you open and we can do the surgery that you do need. And there's 1 in 100 chance it'll go wrong." And I was like, "How many surgeries have you done?" And he goes, It doesn't
He's
work like that.
99. You're going to be the 100th.
Yeah, and he goes, "It doesn't work like that." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." But so I took 2.5 years to get better. So I was told I'd never run again, or run long distances, told I'd never do, lots of things again. And I defied it. I started running after a certain period of time. I do Ironman triathlon. So
Wow. Yeah, shit.
I really pushed the boundaries and around this identity. I knew I was gone from the combat world, that I accepted that, and I fought hard to stay in the military. I had to do huge amounts of justification, and because I watched 2 of my friends, same injuries, gone, and I was like, oh no. So justifications, and then they came back and they said, "All right, cool, we'll offer you Clark." And I was like, oh, okay. That wasn't what I was expecting. I was hoping something different. But it's got to be dealt. I was dealt those cards and wanted to stay in the military and took on there, and then did that for a couple of years.
Wow. And what a story. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah, and just so we don't set up a sense of restitution and recovery for everything that occurs for people, and it's an expectancy from stories. Dan's told this story before, so I'm not prying. But Dan, just so we can set up today's presentation a little better, how hard was it to reclaim yourself, to reclaim your identity, or to find an identity? How did you do it? What needed to occur?
Well, I guess I went to a bottomless pit. So it was. I guess if I look at it, it was. I got married in that time. It was the birth. It was the birth of my son. I was spiraling. And my son was born, and I was like, wow, what am I doing with my life right now? Pumping pain meds and drinking alcohol
daily
on pain meds, and just daily, and masking it very well, functioning. And people at work didn't know. Wife didn't know. Nobody knew, because I became very good at hiding it. And it was like that catalyst of a moment with my son being born. I was like, well, this is what I need to do. I need to sort myself out. I need to accept the cards I've been dealt here right now and work with them, and try and pick myself back up and identify with where I'm heading and where I'm maneuvering, and just to use the military, I just create another OODA loop, just move into a new OODA loop and just continue on. And it still was hard. I still struggled. I was like, oh, this is not for me. Oh, why am I doing this? Especially when I got posted straight to an infantry battalion as a clerk, going, oh my God, watching, do what I used to love. So, and then trying to figure out my new job.
Yeah. Dan, not to disrupt the story, but the person who taught me about OODA loops is actually Robbie. He's the guy that introduced me to the concept of OODA loops.
For those who don't know what that is, it's a term that US fighter pilots used to use back in Vietnam. It's observed orientate, decide, and then act. So if you can do that, observe, orientate, decide, act, OODA loop. If your OODA loop is faster than what your adversary's OODA loop is, you'll be able to outmaneuver them and gain the upper hand. So yeah, that's for those non-military people or people that haven't been exposed to that before. Like my Daniel behind there is like, sweet. I just learned a lot of another. That's an FLA.
Yeah,
that's a 4-letter acronym, not a TLA. A 3-letter.
And that's what it is. If you can get ahead of the thoughts that are happening in your brain, and look, that's just part of my story. When I separated later on, just recently, I got out of the military. I came home from Afghanistan. I'd been passed up on promotion again. I'm the type of person that when I knew I couldn't get to RMC, I like to push the boundaries and question and challenge thought concepts. And in the military, that can sometimes go the wrong way. And so I had an amazing general, because I worked part of NATO. And he just goes, let's go for coffee. And he goes, what are you doing with yourself? You're about to finish your master's, blah, blah, blah. He knew my life story. And I said, what should I do? I think I'm going to get passed up on promotion again. And he goes, get out. He goes, that is my advice to you. Leave. So he goes, you probably haven't been told, this is not the first time you've been told it, but my advice is leave. It's probably best for your own health. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I made that decision. And I came home quite, I'm out of the army, see you later. And, the reason why we've come up with this is that what I did was just cut the cord. I did no prior preparation. I came home, finished my master's, cut the cord, found myself a job, went into high-end corporate recruitment, made tons of money, quite easily, because I had a story, and I would always treat it that I wasn't there to recruit. I was there to learn about your life, and took all my military training to infiltrate and understand instead of go the other way. So I wanted to understand about them, not them about me. And then I call it the feather, the bat, and then the truck. Kind of the event of when I fell off again started to happen. I wasn't following what I wanted to do. Like deep inside me, I knew I wasn't doing my purpose, and I knew I wasn't following like my own heart. And then there was a little gentle tap, like a reminder of something, just like, hey, you're not doing what you want to do. And then the bat came along, and it was something happened. It was something that happened at work that I didn't pay attention to, but I should have, and I won't talk about it. And then the semi hit me, and that was 3 major events happened in my life simultaneously and sent me into that pit again. I went deeper into the pit, and that was the STEMI, and it was a real dark place. And I thought I was, OODA looping quite quickly. But when these 3 catalysts happened at once, it took me to, let's just say I went to the end and beyond, and then came back. Wow. And it was that in those moments that I went, what is it that I actually want to do? I need to step away from this purpose, this job, because this job's doing me harm. It's making money, but I'm not extrinsically motivated for that stuff. What is it that I do? And I kind of went on a bit of a journey. I did like a version of what Soldieron has, Vet Connect. And I rediscovered myself during that process and did my own OODA looping in this career construction, and developed that, hey, why did I join the military? Why was I like what I was as a kid? And went back all the way through my life, because that's what career construction is understanding your aspects of your life, what makes you, your values, your purpose, your childhood. What were you like before you joined the military? What did your aspirations? And I went through this journey, and I came out, I said, well, I just joined the army to actually serve and help people. So why don't I do that again? Why don't I, and when I'll get all spiritual and stuff, and I threw it out to the universe and said, this is what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to help people that are less fortunate than me. So I, did that. COVID happened. I was like, oh my God, the world's against me. No, but I didn't. I OODA looped quite quickly.
Here comes another semi.
And
I
was like, oh no, COVID, but I will go back to DVA. I'll always talk about DVA and that I was medically separated. DVA caught me, right? I always use it as a safety net. Don't try not to rely on it. Use it as a safety net. When I fell off, $150,000, $180,000 a year, they caught me. I wasn't going back to that salary, but they captured me, got me where I needed to go, and moved me into the places where I am now. So they helped with the OODA loop. I identified, and I just made a phone call and to volunteer at a disability space because I thought, I'd love to work with disabilities, and they, I went in to do a volunteer meeting with them, and I walked out with a job. Like, I wasn't expecting a job. I walked out with it. They just said, hey, we're going to interview for a job. Can you come in and do an interview? Can you get us a resume? And I was like, oh, I don't, my resume says nothing about disabilities. I'm all like military and making money. So they said, it's not that. You spoke from the heart, and we can see the purpose and your drive and your passion. And I went into that, and it worked with them finding work, finding their purpose. They call it social role valorization in the disability sector, is understanding what they want to do and trying to get them there and taking them on the journey. And I always say, if I hadn't done that, I probably couldn't do what I was doing right now and what I'm doing right now in Soldier On. I needed that moment. And then I got to a point with that role, and I just said, I need something new, and I need something with veterans. And then it was like a week later, I was doing a 90K bike ride, and I'm getting a phone call from our director, and he's just constantly ringing me. I know him as a friend, and I'm like, oh, stop ringing me. Why are you ringing me? And then he goes, I'm sending you a thing, a PD. I need you to come and do a job. And I was like, oh wow, this is awesome. It's education. I've studied, and so this is where we got to into the career construction space. So that's a bit about my story and how it's understanding. And this is what I want to do, is try and help. And Joe and I and the organisation want to try and help people understand. And that young boy, the father that wants his son to go and join the military, this is for him as well, to go in and say, all right, I'm joining the military. It might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 40 years. But if I can have these steps and understand who I am, life aspects, if something goes wrong, where can I redirect? Yeah. And have that OODA loop on the ball all the time.
Mate, that is a ripper story. That was almost a podcast episode by itself.
So yeah,
lots and lots of lessons learned to be drawn from then. I'm just trying. There was a few things that came up then for me. Do you wish that you had already engaged with a service like Soldier On, or someone or something, whilst you were still serving before you were injured?
Yeah, 100%. I wish I 100% wish that there was, and this is kind of why Joe and I have spoke so heavily about this, and we've spoken about it in the organisation, is I wish that I had an and look, defence is slowly getting there, but it needs to have an organisation that has 1 foot in the corporate sector and 1 foot in the defence sector, so we can then create those connections if someone chooses to transition. And I take it back to the first day. The best day is your first day. And the second best time is right now. So if someone makes an 18-month call, I need to do this, you can start creating and understanding their purpose and breaking down their life, their aspects, their family networks, why they want to do it, and actually define from an educational perspective, a social perspective, an employment perspective of where they want to go and what's going to make them happy. So that transition then just moves, and it's just like a seamless transition. And for defense, if you have that happening right at the end of those success stories, it's a recruitment tool, and it's a retention tool. So it works both ways.
Well, I think what's really important there is that word transition. For me, it's the 4-letter word of the whole current moment that we're in for veterans. Transition. What does transition evoke when I say the word transition?
Fear.
Yeah, but
moving
when you
from
use
one
the word
point to another.
transition, it's almost like we talked about the transition into the military and how much work went into that.
Yeah.
How much work goes into transitioning out? So what I find quite difficult, and what Dan is doing, is actually explaining a way that we can actually encompass the word transition, or a process of transition, because it's prepared for. We're readying people for that transition. You know, we as veterans know the loss that we experience as a consequence of being on the other side of the gate. But we can lessen the blow, lessen the disorientation, lessen the confusion by actually working in a process of transition in conjunction and parallel to the military career.
Yeah.
So an aspect of their military progression will also have one foot in, one foot out, because everyone transitions. But what we have right now is not transition, it's migration. It is migration to literally a different world. I'll leave it at there if you want to just unpack what I've just said.
I was just going to say quickly that one of the best parts of the previous podcast we did was the hard body, soft body explanation you did.
Yeah.
The hypervigilant versus, casual aspect that civvies have. So, yeah, it was really, really interesting. But, yeah, fellas, continue on, please.
It's it's trying to have them see that purpose and identity isn't really lost. It's in constant evolution. Just like, and the only constant thing in life is change. Right. And there's only, and I would like saying, to go further, there's only two reasons why people change. It's the fundamentals of it all. You're either inspired to change, or you change through desperation. So what we want to do is try to inspire them to see that purpose, identity is constantly fluid, and that decisions are, what they're doing is try to follow their heart, try to follow deep inside them, and the decisions that they're making aren't wrong. And some of these processes that we've worked with, a young guy who took about 2.5 hours, and we went into breaking down his life, what he wanted to do, his career in the military, and his purpose was information technology, and we mapped it out. I knew I didn't want to tell him what I think that he needed to do, because as soon as you start telling people, they put their shutters up, or they don't believe you, or we're trying to make them connect with the journey themselves. So connection, they own it, they'll accept it, and they'll push on. I knew his family situation as well. But we mapped out IT. I hadn't heard from him for a little bit, and I was talking at a university, and I walked into the university and I saw him, and I was like, how are you? He was like beaming, and I was like, wow, you've made the decision to go to uni. That's fantastic. We're talking about it, and he's like, yeah. I said, so you're doing IT? He goes, oh, actually, no, I'm not. And I was like, oh, okay, that's a bit of a surprise, because I'm becoming a teacher. And I was like, oh. And when he told me, I was like, that's awesome, because this is what you were suited for. But, I didn't want to tell you this. And what he did is he went home, and because of his family situation and he took everything we'd mapped out, took photos of it all, printed them all out, and went, actually, this is not what I want to do. Yeah. And remapped it out himself. And he said, what I need to do is I need to be here for my family. And he mapped out to become a teacher. And he's already networked with schools, and he's only just begun. And he's saying that schools are offering him jobs already due to the special ed needs that he wants to go down. And he just went from, when I first met him, it was like, to full smiles, not identify. You know, I'm a teacher. I'm studying. I'm doing this. This is my purpose. And I was like, man, that is like, I was excited and beaming for it.
So what we have here is an ethical life. Outside of the health industry, the psychology, psychiatry, medical, and all the other allied health, the military is one of the very few organisations that actually have an ethics. And one of those things that really fucking pissed me off was when a psychologist colleague told me that the military person is very shallow. There's no depth to that person. And I took such an affront to that because the work itself requires a strong ethic. Now, we're provided institutional ethics and values, and they're instilled with us. You know, that sense of, you know, that right and wrong, just, unjust, what is permissible, what's not permissible, what is fair and unfair, and the like, yeah? And this ethic is the thing that drives our values, our purpose and principles. You know, the principles let us know what is right. You know, the purpose is the reason for being, yeah? And the values tell us what is good. And my belief is that most veterans walk into a world where there is no ethical self at the moment, where everyone is an atomized or a self-interested person. And it is prized out here. The hyper-individual is prized out here. We come from a we environment where we have our special bonds out into a world suffused with me, myself, and a radicalized I.
Mm-hmm. Everyone's in it for themselves. There is no doubt about that.
So right here, right now, what the career constructionist model is doing is tapping into the ethical life of a military person and veteran, to get them to make that their new mission.
Yeah. And the objective is for us to hold, not hold their hand, but be with them on the entire journey.
That's right.
We have an education team, we have an employment team, we have social connections, we have psychology, we're national, we have the capability, and of what we do here in Brizzy, and is I'll have employment, social connections if he can make it, and myself from education, and we will sit there and as a whole organisation talk to this one person and have a discussion and break it right down. And then, they go, hey, I need to study. Well, we've got options. Here's our educational partners. And this is, we've got a scholarship program. This is how we can help you, and then once you can see that we've got all these options, and we're not going to let you go. We're going to capture you, and we're going to hold on to you as much as we can. And you've got DVA support, and you've got all these other supports around you. You see that, that fear and that worry start to melt away, and it's that purpose then, and that drives forward. And we have the luxury of a social work student with us at the moment. So we had like the social connections element with us during one of them, and he acted on that, and he was talking as well in the meeting. And I was saying it takes 2 or 3 hours, and then it's like a penny drops. And the young guy was like, you know what, I'm going to go into social work and study this. And I was like, awesome. I noticed a lot of from the military community is they want to go back into giving. It's all about that we and that selflessness and giving back to community.
Some of the things I've experienced, I've coached hundreds and hundreds of clients over the years, and some of them are already veterans, and they're thinking about transition. And I'm just reflecting now on some of the things I'm hearing. The question I asked them is like, what do you want to do when you get out of the military? And I'm actually funneling them into giving me an answer as far as what sector do you want to work in?
Yeah.
And a lot of them are like, and we, Dan, you appreciate this, but both of you really, you don't join the military to make a shit ton of money. You join the military to give back and to serve and to do all those things that sort of light your fire. And a lot of, there's that sort of calculator that you can use. If I've got these skills and I include my leave and include my RA, like this is how much money I'd be on in the civvy world per se. A lot of people, before they have this realization, I have experienced a lot of people get out and chase the dollars. Dan, as per the story you said, I'm good at understanding people. I've got a great story to tell. I'm going to go and bloody work in recruitment, and I'm going to fucking make a shit ton of money. That'll reach its natural conclusion at some stage, because you are selling your soul to the devil. You're not actually working in a space and in an industry, and you are living your best life soulfully.
Yeah.
So and then people will eventually go back to living soulfully after they've gone and scratched that itch of working in the corporate sector, thinking they're making a lot of money. And just quickly, Joe, before you jump in, because I know you've got lots to add here, we've got a gentleman that's going to join Axon soon. He's in the process of transitioning from the military now. Highly skilled, highly decorated, highly sought after major. The defense sector is on him big time to come and have him work for them and earn a said shit tin of money. He's got so much self-awareness and so much long-term goals as far as who he is and what he wants to do. He doesn't want to go back and work in the corporate sector. He doesn't want to go and sell his soul. He doesn't care about making a shit tin of money. He's going to come and join us, and he's going to work, and he's going to come and live his best life soulfully. So it's just, if you're listening to this now, ladies and gents, and you're out or you're thinking about getting out, you have got a choice. You either follow your heart and follow some of the principles that the gentleman here is speaking about, or you go chase some money for a little while, and then you'll end up in another downward spiral as Dan examined, and then you'll have to get yourself back out of it and go and follow who it is you actually are.
Well, and yeah, absolutely. Find, it's not only finding your best self, find your ethical self, reclaim that. And it's easy to get lost out here without having that ethic. If I was to best explain the world out here, is let's just picture a whitewashed room, the old padded cell, and in the middle of it there is a treadmill, and that treadmill is set just at that pace that is just slightly uncomfortable for you to run, but that's the pace you select, and you get on it, and you keep running and running and running and running and running and running and running. So what would happen if you continued to run?
Well, me, I'd keep running because I'm super fit. So I'm well, not at the moment. I'm just recovering from COVID. So I'd probably last 2 seconds and fall off the treadmill.
Yeah, you're gonna wait for it to finish at some stage.
Well, it won't.
You're gonna hope it's gonna end.
Yeah.
Well, what if
that comes back to that truck?
Well, what if you knew there was someone else in the next room that's just running at the same pace? What do you do?
Yeah, interesting. I haven't thought about this actually.
You just keep running because it's competitive. It's self-interested. There's this real sense that I'm in competition with everyone out here. And when we're in competition with people, the natural inclination is to look for weaknesses. So we're a society premised on the fact that when we look at our fellow person, we automatically start trying to deconstruct them and look for weaknesses.
The military train is to do that though, because only the strong survive and only the best get promoted. And when you're in your current job, you've almost got one eye on what the next job is, and then when you move to that next job, you're already looking about what the next one is. So no one really. A lot of people don't settle and allow themselves to enjoy their current role and then just really focus on that, because when you're in the rock and roll of the posting cycle, especially as you get to that junior NCO, senior NCO, and certainly officer level, you're on the move every couple of years anyway. So you've always got one eye on what's coming, Joe.
That's right. You are. And absolutely. But you're connected to something bigger than yourself, always. Yeah. So there is a we environment. Yeah. Out here, there's only a me environment. You're not connected to something bigger than yourself. And that's the big difference.
You've got to start looking. Okay, go, Joe.
I was about to say, so this world is suffused with more loneliness than all of our history, evolved history. This is the loneliest moment for human beings, and it only got worse with the pandemic. So much so that there's 3 in 5 people in the USA, which is reflective across Europe and also in Australia, that say that they are lonely. There's quite a significant, only more than 50% of millennials who are going through that say that, who are 15 years old, say that don't even have a single friend. this is a lonely, lonely world, because right now the world out here is not providing the context for a communal world. It really is this hyper me world. But the thing is that there's also a hyper responsibility, that if we fail despite the structure not supporting us, or if we don't succeed, or if we, miss the rent, it's our fault. Not the structural problems that are out there, not that the fact that, and this is why we need to be there along the whole way, not halfway, not just at the interview and doing the resume, but at the whole way through their career, is because the traditional tenured job no longer exists. We're in a contract world. Yeah. So these contracts, the authority of our work environment is based on the authority of the contracts and not trust or promises of long-term covenants. They're not investing in you as employees as they once did. And that, there's no real sense of compassion necessary, because what they're asking for is flexibility and mobility. Works expect us to be flexible all the time, and to be flexible and open to change at very short notice. Yeah, they want us to multitask. That's a word that's very recent. And what often that genuinely means is that it amounts to the responsibility of 3 or 4 employees that used to be there, but due to downsizing no longer are there. Yep. And we need to be embracing flexi time, which basically translate to working more than 40 hours a week and constantly at the employer's beck and call. So we're in this constant change, but what's changed the most is that the tenured job, that job that my dad and perhaps and my mum had, where you were junior and finished and retired in the same place, does not exist.
Very rare.
And unfortunately, a lot of ESOs or a lot of supports and even government policy reflects that world. Whereas with career construction, we embrace the fact that this is the reality of the moment. We accept it. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, but we accept what it is. So to create the sense of security and a secure base, we'll be there along the way, developing you through these contracts.
Yeah. Following your purpose. Following
you and ensuring that you maintain that line throughout your life. So Soldier On effectively wants to be here for the long term. I think one of our 2 board members, Peter Lay, being one of them, said here for the 100 years at a recent meeting that we're at. And we're very much committed to that long term, because we know that that's what it needs to happen. I just keep reminding people, 23 years of continuous
operations,
continuous deployment and continuous operations. No time in our history, in our federated history, have we gone through that period. Yet we're met with structural indifference by our society, who are more invested in the current Ukraine crisis than they were in 23 years, who know more about towns in Ukraine than they did where our troops were overseas. That's structural, that is indifference at another level. And never have we experienced such a cycle of deployments and operations and such indifference. Yeah. And so we don't know what's going to happen to our people like us over the long term. We don't know what's going to happen to our children and their children as a consequence of these 23 years. That is the fact. There is no long-term research there. We don't know. Yeah. So people, ESOs like Soldier On, visionaries like Dan, need to be spoken about, because in essence, we're going to be there for the long term. We're going to be alongside you, developing that career that you want according to the ethic that you desire. And what we need are people like you, Robbie. Organisations like Axon, yeah, who, effectively, if you were to see a corporate partner or another corporate model, might be more inclined to not look at the values and the ethical self, maybe more corporatized in terms of maximizing profits. There's nothing wrong with the profit ideal, but in terms of the ethic, creating a workspace that actually facilitates and holds the veteran, I think that's what's most important. That's what makes you, Robbie, so important.
Well, mate, I was just thinking then, before you said that, I went, I think we're contributing to this, because at the end of the day, the vision or the purpose or the reason for being that Axon exists is to allow the defence community, that is veterans serving and their families, to secure their financial future using property. And if I could almost put on the back end of that, in order to avoid being under some sort of financial stress when you don't have the guaranteed paycheck coming in every fortnight. There is no doubt about it. And please correct me if I'm wrong, gentlemen. Being under financial pressure is a significant contributor to one's PTSD when they find themselves in the outside world. Yes or no?
Look, the financial pressure, yes, absolutely. And the thing is that this is the point that I'm trying to make out here. The out here, it is so individual. You know, the individual is put as the person who's to blame for structural issues. There's reason why, you know, the wages, you know, the biggest theft that's occurring in the world right now is wage theft. Yep. If people got paid what they, you know, according to what they worked, then perhaps, and paid their worth, we wouldn't have these financial stresses that we have now. And the veteran is the one that is most vulnerable to that wage theft. And it's also in the literature that they use to hire the veteran. You know, someone who works hard, persistent, goes the extra mile. I see that and I say yes, yes, yes to all of it. But perhaps you're not providing the ethical environment they need, and you're more interested in the wage theft than anything else.
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm happy to say that Axon is on the other end of the spectrum as far as that goes. Yeah. There is,
and trust us, Robbie, and listeners, we wouldn't be in this conversation if they were at the other end.
Well, it's also an employee's market at the moment. So the market is so tight, and people, you know, with that big resignation that everyone was talking about, COVID is, you know, have got a lot of people thinking, you know, this career construction paradigm, and, you know, what do I want to do? You know, what makes me happy? You know, and hopefully it will start to force that change. And, you know, for the veteran community, because they're so highly sought after as well in organizations, especially defense industries and stuff like that, will start to create that shift well, we actually desperately need these people. Let's change.
Yeah.
It literally, what's happened with the Great Resignation, which is a great statement, is that people have decided to step off that stupid treadmill, and look, and realize that once they get off the treadmill, they can slow it down, speed it up whenever they want, and they can walk out the room and be with the people who they value most. That treadmill is something that is now ensconced within the reality of our everyday living in the civilian world, and it is seen as normative. And I think COVID, if anything COVID has done, is let a lot of people see that you can't run yourself into burnout for contentness. And that's what people were doing.
Just yesterday, one of the guys that works here caught up with a bunch of his cohort classmates on the weekend, and many of them are back now serving, but they got out just before COVID hit, and they thought, I'm going to get out. I've got this great idea. I'm going to start my own business. Boom, 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 boom. Thanks, Defence. I'm done with you. See you later. And then, of course, a global pandemic hit, and they're like, oh, shit, this hasn't worked out. And I'm like, Mr. Defence, can I come back to you, please? And thankfully, they've all now been
sorry.
like,
please forgive me.
And I've got no dramas with that. And my first reaction to him was, I said, I bet that they are now, even if they're only out for a few months, let's call it 6 or so months, when you're out, you're immediately in that soft-bodied world, and you're surrounded by all those things we spoke about last time and what we're speaking about now. If you were to go back in, they've just got a different perspective. Like, they'll be viewing life in the service again through a slightly different prism, because they've got that context of what it's actually like in the real world. And this is the world that all of us get to. Like, here's the thing. even my humble 23 and a half years in the military, I'm going to spend more time out of the military than what I am in. So the real world that we live in is the one that has the majority of our lifespan. So why not focus on, how to operate in that?
Yeah.
And actually, when we all look back and we're all 60 and 70 years old, we're going to look back at a time in our military as a very short period in our life, but as a very impactful period of our life.
A transformational period in our life and the most profound period in our life as well, that shifted our way of being into something different to what's designed out here. We are designed for different needs and we're designed for different contingencies. And there really isn't an easy way to say it, but you will never not be a veteran. We can argue about what we call ourselves post-military, but we do need to define ourselves by the fact that we had been in the military. It is such a defining and shifting experience that it's very difficult not to carry aspects of the military as much as you choose not to want to for the rest of your life. And that's, I think, an important thing to sort of take on board, because there's a lot of people trying to gaslight us into believing that we need to become civilians. I don't know that we can, and I don't know that I've never read anything convincing me in my research that that's a possibility and that's a good desired outcome.
We'll always be ex-defense working in a civilian environment.
Yeah, and I keep saying that people say, yeah, but this is the natural world. I go, no, it's not a natural world. This is the world that we've become, and I started thinking about, why do people keep saying this is the natural world? And I think, oh my God, that's right, because for them that is the natural world. And they co-opt the origin stories, the story of our evolution to suit the moment. So for instance, after World War II, they had the concept of killer ape. Yeah, we evolved from the killer ape. So we were full of anger and the anger and we had this capacity and propensity to kill and destroy, and that everything we touched turned into a weapon. This was to rationalize what had just happened. The reality is that if you read Grossman's work, that in fact, most soldiers did not kill. In fact, they shot over the head of the combatants, and we know that story. You've discussed it before in previous podcasts. Then in the 1960s, when we went to tech and trying to get to the moon, all of a sudden it became about the tools and how innovative we were. But then they went with the gender stereotypes, the women versus men. Divide. Men provided, women went out and collected, So it suited that moment, the 1960s, that very patriarchal world. And now what we're seeing is this unemotional survival of the fittest, and also the unemotional self-interest. The native as self-interested. But the truth of the matter is that the only reason why we survived evolution and got here was not because of self-interest. It was because we cooperated, we cared for each other, we tended to each other, and cop this, yeah? This is a shot across the bow to the police force, to the military, and to any of the first responders. Our fucking design has care and kindness embedded in it. And so the most fittest and best, defined by the fact probably the best hunter in our context, because it's what we value, right? Well, that best hunter spent at least a third of his life in convalescence and needed to be cared for and tended to. And so what I want to say today, and it's just deviating slightly, is if the military, the police, and also all the first responders actually put that within their workflow, that people that come through the system who go out and do the wear and tear work are going to spend a third of their career in convalescence and make that a normative process, I wonder how that'll change the transition.
It'll change the transition, the recruitment, the whole aspect of it all.
Yeah, 100%. Fellas, I want to finish up on this one point, which is yelling at me right now. Quick question first. How many of the veterans reach out to Soldier On that have got out of the military from a sudden event or in a short, like that it wasn't a planned and staged and synchronized egress? Probably most or some, percentage-wise?
I would say majority. We get into the soldier on recovery centres and stuff, and we all talk to them about transition. And a lot of them are medically separating, or they're having that sudden event that's causing that to happen.
Whatever it is, correct. So would you agree then, fellas, that if the majority of people getting out right now, there has been some sort of sudden event across the range of things, admin, medical, psych, whatever, that you're going to separate for? To me, it is an absolute no-brainer that you should reach out to someone like Soldier On and commence your engagement with them now. Because if the majority of people that's happening to, and therefore the majority of people are then on a very fast learning curve or on a bit of whiplash, they're like, oh shit, this has just occurred. I don't know where to go from here. They're grappling with the issue and they're grappling with the consequences of that issue. Please, ladies and gents, and I'm not here banging the drum for Soldier On. I'm here banging the drum because I care about people, Joe, and what your little rant just went
Robbie,
on.
that's exactly the point.
Yeah.
We need each other. It's not the survival of the fittest. It really is the survival of those who can collaborate, care, and be kind to each other the most. That was our evolutionary ancestor that survived. That is the ethic that goes through the military. And, when we talk about moral injury, it's when that ethic goes out the window that creates that moral injury. It's the ethic that should wait for you at the gates out here. So let us do what is natural and what is human. And, the civilians have lost their way. Let us not lose our way too.
I can assure you. Go for it, Dan, and I'll finish off, bud.
I'd go one step further. Don't get to that point. Don't get to that catalyst. Don't get to that semi-trailer coming along the road and giving you a little touch-up and giving you that dark space. Do it now. As I said, if you might start networking, reach out to people, come talk to us. We've got experts in all different fields. You might not get out for another 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Doesn't matter.
But start it now. Start right at this very moment, because if that truck happens, it's not going to be a truck. It'll be just a gentle little.
It'll be the feather.
Little bump in the road. Yeah, just be a little tap.
I just reflect on my time. There'd be so many people listening to this right now. They'll be like, I know the gentlemen have said over thousands of cases coming across their way since Soldier On started, that the majority of them happen in some sort of sudden impact, but that won't happen to me. I don't need to reach out to these guys. I'll be fine.
Correct.
For those that know my story, and I haven't divulged it to the world yet, but it's coming. I'm fostering the courage to do so. For those that know my story, there is no bigger truck that can happen in a public and military sense. And I was probably the most arrogant one that thought that's never going to happen to me. I can keep running and I can keep doing what I was doing, and find myself totally okay. But when the truck hits you, you'll be on that bloody treadmill faster than what you can find, and it's very, very hard. So please, I ask you to all reach out and not be that arrogant and ignorant prick as I was back in the day, and find a way to reach out to someone so you've got yourself sorted if and when that happens.
Yeah.
Fellas, thanks so much for coming on to our Axons Unleashed podcast. Another fantastic episode. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, if you got something out of this, please share it with your mates. Do the righty. Share it amongst your friends. Tag. I'm not asking you for a 5-star recommendation. I don't care about that. I want you to make sure you share this amongst your community, because if you got one little gold nugget out of this, everyone deserves to feel that same little gold nugget, because everyone's going to view it and listen to it through their own little prism. So, yeah, over to you. You guys have now got the baton. Go ahead and share it as much as you can. Dan Vincent, Joe Lucino, you guys are amazing ambassadors for Soldier On. You look amazing sitting there in your shirts as I sit there with my little polo as well. It's almost like I feel like a PDI. I'm like, bloody PDIs are kicking around with the polo shirts all the time. Wonder if I get to do that one day. Well, guess what? We're doing that as well. Fellas, thanks so much for joining us on Axons Unleashed. See you again next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.